Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're jumping straight into something pretty significant happening in global payments.
Yeah, a really big development. We're talking about the strategic dance between global payments and FIS.
Exactly. And our mission here is to, get beyond just the surface news.
Right. We want to unpack what's really driving this collaboration or maybe decoupling in some ways.
Mhm.
Look at their motivations, the strategies.
And what it could all mean down the road, what the future might hold.
We're leaning heavily on the analysis from the Nielsen report for this one. They've got some great coverage on this specific deal.
So you might have seen the headlines swirling around global payments, FIS, WorldPay.
Not quite.
But we're here to connect those dots.
Figure out what it really signifies for the whole payments world.
Okay, so let's dive in. What's the basic structure of this deal?
All right, so the headline piece is Global Payments planning to buy WorldPay's merchant acquiring business.
And that's a hefty price tag, right?
It is $22.7 billion. And interestingly, it's a mix cash and stock.
Okay, cash and stock, and at the same time.
At the same time, FIS is buying Global Payments Issuer Solutions Unit. That's going for $13.5 billion.
1350. And that includes some tax benefits, I think.
It does. And crucially, it's cash plus FIS giving up its stake in WorldPay as part of the payment. So it's quite intertwined.
Like a big asset swap almost.
Sort of, yeah. And we should probably remember GTCR, the private equity firm.
Oh, right. They just bought into WorldPay recently.
Exactly. Finalized in Q1 2024. They bought the majority stake from FIS for $18.5 billion, with maybe another billion potentially. So GTCR is already a key player here.
And now, with these new deals, GTCR ends up owning a piece of global payments.
A significant piece, 15%. That's not insignificant shareholder power.
Wow, okay. Lots of moving parts. When is all this supposed to actually happen?
The timeline they're looking at is the first half of 2026. But, these things always depend on regulatory nods and closing conditions.
Standard procedure for deals this size. So, billions changing hands, big assets moving. But let's get to the why. What's the motivation behind the specific split?
Yeah, what's the story they're trying to write here? For global payments, it seems pretty straightforward, actually.
They want to be the biggest.
Pretty much. The biggest merchant acquirer globally. Processing more card transactions than anyone. They're explicitly aiming to overtake JP Morgan payments.
That's a bold ambition, setting their sights high.
It really is.
Yeah.
It shows how valuable controlling that merchant relationship and the transaction flow is becoming, especially with everything moving digital.
Right. It gives you more control, more data, maybe more services you can layer on top. Okay, so that's global payments. What about FIS? What's their motivation?
FIS is looking at a different but equally vital part of the chain. Buying Global Payments Issuer Solutions means a massive expansion for them in card account processing.
Expanding their global reach.
Significantly. Into over 70 new countries just through this one acquisition. It's about deepening their focus on the issuing side.
It's interesting how complementary these moves seem, isn't it? Like they each identified what they're best at or want to be best at.
Exactly. It looks quite deliberate. Yeah. WorldPay brings global payments, that e-commerce expertise and experience with really large enterprise clients.
Which global payments maybe didn't have as much of. Their strength was more SMB.
Right. Small and mid-sized businesses, and also their push into embedded payment, payments inside software. So WorldPay fills a gap and adds scale.
And the Issuer Solutions Unit, FIS, is getting, you mentioned it's mostly SIS. Can you unpack that a bit? What does that unit actually do?
Sure. Think of Issuer Solutions, the SIS platform, as the engine room for banks and others who issue cards.
The back-end stuff?
Totally. Core processing, making sure transactions go through, security like tokenization, managing loyalty programs, rewards, even running call centers. It's the essential plumbing.
And it's a profitable business unit.
Very. Generated $2.46 billion in revenue last year, and the EBITDA margin was impressive, over 45%.
45%? Wow. Okay. And the scale is huge, too.
Massive. We're talking managing something like 885 million credit card accounts, processing around 40 billion transactions a year.
Just staggering numbers. And FIS was already a big player in processing, weren't they?
Oh, yeah. Huge in debit and credit processing, especially in the US, UK, Canada, Australia. And they provide tech to tons of big banks. This just makes them even more of a powerhouse on the issuing side.
So it really is a story of doubling down. Global Payments wants to own the merchant relationship. FIS wants to own the issuing infrastructure.
That's a good way to put it, each sharpening their focus.
Okay, so we've got a handle on the motivations. Now, how do they plan to actually execute On these ambitions, what are the commercial strategies? Let's start with global payments.
Right. The how. For global payments, a big part is leveraging WorldPay's assets. Specifically, their domestic acquiring licenses. Apparently, they have more than anyone else.
Okay, so that gives them entry into markets or maybe deeper penetration.
Both, potentially. And combining that with WorldPay's relationships with those really big, complex enterprise clients, it's about scaling up and scaling out.
Expanding the types of businesses they serve globally.
Exactly. When you put them together, Global Payments and WorldPay, they'll be connected to over 6 million merchants.
6 million.
And the projected volume is just immense, around $3.7 trillion in annual payments from nearly 94 billion transactions.
That really paints the picture of the scale they're chasing.
It does. And the combined financials look strong, too. Pro forma net revenue around $12.5 billion, EBITDA about $6.5 billion. They're building a giant.
Clearly aiming for that number one spot. Okay, shifting gears to FIS. How does buying issuer solutions change their commercial game plan?
For FIS, it's primarily about expanding their client base in issuer processing. They get over 170 new financial institution and corporate partners practically overnight from this deal.
So more banks, more credit unions, more companies relying on them for that back-end card processing.
Precisely. It cements their role as a truly comprehensive fintech provider, but with a much stronger emphasis now on the issuing side globally.
Makes sense. Are there other parts to the strategy? Like, do they keep working together in some ways?
Yes, actually. There's a referral agreement baked into the deal,
What do you mean?
meaning Global Payments will actively promote other FIS products, things like core banking platforms, treasury management, risk, and fraud tools.
Ah, so even though they're splitting these units, they plan to leverage each other's client relationships.
Seems like it. A way to keep generating value from those connections even after the separation, which kind of leads us naturally to thinking about the future, right? What happens next?
Yeah, the ripple effects. With global payments being this newly bulked up merchant acquiring force, competition's got to heat up, doesn't it?
You'd have to assume so. They're making a very clear play for leadership. That's bound to put pressure on others in the merchant space.
And FIS, what's their next move likely to be?
Integration, integration, integration. They'll need to smoothly bring that issuer solutions business into the fold. The goal will be to offer this wider, hopefully more compelling set of services to banks and FIs worldwide.
Capitalizing on that increased scale and reach.
Exactly.
So you've got these two kind of super specialized giants emerging. How does that shake things up for everyone else? Other processors like, say, Fiserv or Block. What about Visa and MasterCard?
That's the million-dollar question, or maybe billion-dollar question here. Yeah, other acquirers will feel the heat from global payments. They might need to get more innovative, maybe look for their own partnerships.
Or maybe even specialize further themselves?
Could be. For the networks, Visa, MasterCard, a stronger global payments might mean tougher negotiations, but also potentially just more volume overall.
And for FIS or competitors on the issuing side?
Similar pressure. Companies like Fiserv might need to really emphasize their unique strengths or find new ways to partner to compete against the scale FIS now brings to issuer processing. It could definitely trigger a broader reshuffle in the ecosystem.
What about for, the businesses taking payments or us consumers making them? Do we see any difference?
Well, that's always the hope, isn't it? The potential is there for more innovation, with these companies being more focused.
They might invest more in new tech.
Possibly. Better tools for merchants, maybe smoother experiences or more options for consumers. Whether that actually happens or if it's just more competition behind the scenes, we'll have to see. It could lead to better pricing or services eventually.
It's all part of that constant churning in how we pay for things.
Yeah.
Okay, let's try and wrap this up. What are the key takeaways from this deep dive into global payments and FIS?
I think the main thing is we're seeing a really significant strategic realignment here. Global Payments is making a very deliberate, very aggressive play for dominance in merchant acquiring.
Taking aim squarely at the top spot globally.
Yep. And on the flip side, FIS is massively boosting its issuer processing capabilities, buying that issuer solutions unit to expand its global footprint in that specific area.
So the core idea for both is focus and scale.
Exactly. Doubling down on their core strengths, getting bigger and more competitive in their chosen lanes within this huge payments landscape.
Okay, so we end up with these two, let's call them newly sharpened giants, each ready to compete fiercely in their specific domain. It does make you think, though.
Yeah.
Well, the whole payments world is changing so fast. We even see mentions in Nielsen about things like AI agents handling payments in the future.
Yeah.
How do these newly focused companies, Global Payments and FIS, how do they stay agile and compete in that future?
That is the really interesting question to ponder, isn't it? What opportunities does this new focus open up for them?
Mhm.
But also, what challenges will they face as technology just keeps racing ahead and how we all buy things continues to evolve? Definitely something to keep a close eye on.